All right, so on the line right now is the director of the movie Neither Wolf Nor Dog, Mr. Stephen Lewis Simpson. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you very much.
Sweet. So, yeah, I actually seen the movie a couple days ago, and I had to say a pretty good movie. So for our listeners that have not seen it yet, can you tell us what this movie is really about?
Well, it's about an author based on the real author Kent Nerburn, who wrote a book that the movie's based on, who gets sucked into this road trip through the heart of Lakota country by an elder and his sidekick, who are basically trying to open his eyes and heart to the realities of their life and their world.
All right, so now I actually enjoyed the movie. Now, how long did it take to shoot the movie? Because it didn't seem like it took very long.
Well, we filmed it in probably about 125 shooting hours. One of the things when your star is 95 years old, you have to move quickly,
Yeah.
just to deal with energy levels. So, a lot of the film was shot incredibly quickly.
And it stayed until the closing credits, and it said you guys shot this on the Pine Ridge Reservation.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, how was the reception over there with the movie?
Oh, I mean, it's the third feature I've shot there, and there's nowhere my work is better received, which I'm always thrilled about. I always make sure that it's shown there first, and I mean, the thing about it is that they get the most layers out of it, and I think particularly when the film has been so passed into the hands of Dave Bald Eagle in particular. I think they really, love the depth that he brought to it. Particularly, for example, with the sequence at Wounded Knee, where, I threw away what was in the novel and in the screenplay, and he improvised the whole sequence because his own personal background was closer to the events of Wounded Knee than even the character he was playing. I mean, Dave was Mini Koju from Cheyenne River, and grew up around his grandfather who, was at Little Bighorn and all these other things. And so, he managed to just bring so much weight to it that, no one else could have.
Yeah, so basically bring the authenticity to it. I was actually moved by this movie at the same time because within here in Yakima, I live on the Yakima Nation, and I got a lot of the res humor, and this movie spoke a lot of truth between what went down the past couple hundred years to present day at the same time. So now, as far as its cast goes, you got Dave Bald Eagle, and then of course local actor here from Yakima, Christopher Sweeney. What was it like working with the cast members?
Well, it was fantastic. I mean, when you're shooting that fast, it's a sort of pretty insane time for me, pulling it all together. But, they all just had my back in the most wonderful way, and they all bonded so closely. And it's funny because it's, I got an amazing native cast. I mean, with Dave, there's Richard Ray Whitman and Roseanne Supernaud and, Tahanka Means and Zon McLarnon. But the irony is that the token white lead, if you like, is the only white guy that I know who was born in an IHS hospital. He was born in the Indian Health Service Hospital on Yakima Nation, and by Toppenish. And what are the odds of that?
Pretty much, yeah, because I heard about this movie through Facebook, and I did not know Christopher Sweeney was actually from here in Yakima, so I had decided, no, I want to support this. Now, especially with the cast you were working with, and you mentioned that this is like your third feature film. What is it like to work with the Native Americans, working with the indigenous within this country?
Well, the funny thing about it is I think that the important thing for me as a director coming into this was the perspective that I could bring by not being an American.
Okay.
And it's a very important thing because if I was a white American director, then I wouldn't have been able to appreciate the awkwardness of, the white American Nerburn type in Indian country. And it's interesting because Pine Ridge is an amazing place for a lot of different reasons. But one of the things that most people will never talk about is that the people there are incredibly cosmopolitan, particularly compared to the surrounding area. Everyone I know on the res has friends from Switzerland or France or Germany or whatever, and some are well traveled. I have a friend there who has a Mongolian yurt in her garden that she picked up in Mongolia, and whereas most people in South Dakota, even government people that I know, could barely tell you what was going on in Montana. And so the res is it's somewhere where their European friends come in and there's just an instantaneous bond. And the difference is, for example, if I was the one that got the call from the elder, as happens in the film, within 60 seconds, we would have been cracking jokes at the table. I'd be crashing on his couch that night. The next day I'd be taking, if Winona didn't have a car, I'd be driving her and her kids to the nearest Walmart or whatever to pick up supply. I mean, I just, that's been a joy of mine. I've experienced that so many times in the most wonderful way. And, I'll give you an example. The second time I was out there, one morning I went to pick up this lady to take her to a protest. The people were occupying the tribal government building for about a year. And her father, who was 78, met me at the door, welcomed me in, and we chatted for 5-10 minutes, really hit it off. He said, come back this evening, which meant stay there. I did. Stayed there for the rest of my trip and many times subsequently, and they became like family to me. And then years later, I read in Peter Matheson's famous book, In the Spirit of Crazy Horse, about the Leonard Peltier FBI shootout, that the FBI described this man's family that he was the head of as one of the two most hostile families in the most hostile area in the entire United States. And within 5-10 minutes, he offered me his friendship and his hospitality. And to me, that sums it up. It's the most profoundly beautiful thing I've experienced. I've been in dozens of countries in this world and have never been welcomed anywhere more. Whereas I recognize that Kent Nurburn's reality there, even though he's a much-loved figure in those communities, he always talks about the shadow in the room. Mm-hmm. But I know that he's projecting it as well because he's feeling guilt and all these other emotions and dealing with his own nation's propaganda of the freedom and yet the genocide and how to whereas most everyone in Europe's like, well, we know whose land it was and we all just arrive into Indian country with big goofy smiles on our faces looking to make friends. So that perspective for me was crucial because I think it's sort of one of those things that doesn't sort of get spotted enough about the film is that a lot of it is about and I think Chris does a great job with the awkwardness of his body language. Because if you look at the Lakota characters in the film, they all are inhabiting their own spaces so beautifully. But they're centered, they know where it's at and all these other things. He's the one that's dislocated. And I think that's what's really nice about it in that sense is that, I know how real that sort of journey is. And, from witnessing it, I went on the real road trip with a real Kent Nurburn. And took him to meet, there was one elder who I took him to meet, and it's a guy I hadn't met in a long time. And, I phoned this elder up, and his opening line, before I opened my mouth, his opening line on the phone was, FBI or CIA? and I replied, neither, it's a movie producer. And he just cracked up. I just rolled on in there, and we were just riffing, punchlines back and forth, and Kent was sitting there, I'm with an elder, I need to be respectful. And it was so interesting just witnessing that. Every wise man I've ever met in this world had an amazing sense of humor, and so that's how I interpret wisdom. Okay. It's great to be respectful and all those other things, but giving of yourself in the most full way is the most respectful way you can be, in my view. Yeah. And so that's always the thing. I always have a blast with so many of these amazing people I've had the honor to meet. Dave Bald Eagle in particular.